Today we're going to talk about Middlemarch by George Eliot. It's a big old fat one, so get yourself ready. Here's the thing about this book. George Eliot is actually a woman, and this was her pseudonym, what's it called, your author name. And her real name was Mary Ann Evans Cross. And there's a whole long story behind her and how she took off, and I don't know, I can't remember if she lived with the guy or she married him, but her family didn't approve and she kind of left her religion behind. Anyway, this is a book that, interestingly enough, there's two editions of the Great Books of the Western World set. And I'm just about pretty positive that it's not in the old set, and I just got the new set for my master's program, and Middlemarch is in it. So I had just barely finished it up here just recently, and it's one of those books that is so big, and I have so much going on that I decided I don't have time to just read it at night. So I listened to it on LibriVox, which I talked about on that post, and then I kept the book with me and just marked down stuff that I thought was fabulous. I've been trying to figure out ever since my new Great Book set came why they put it in the new Great Book set, because it's not like, it's interesting because what's not in there is Les Mis. So, if you're going to read a big fat book, now this isn't quite as big as that one, this is 900 pages, Les Mis is actually longer than that. War and Peace is in there, but big books like that you've heard of, I don't know about you, maybe you've heard of Middlemarch. I hadn't heard of Middlemarch. And so, until, I don't know, the last few years, like Jane Eyre has just always been around and been marvelous. I heard of that one years ago, but I still didn't hear of Middlemarch, and it's in the Great Book set, which is really quite interesting. It seems like it hasn't been as popular, I don't know, here in the States. It's a book you don't hear about much. Anyway, it really was marvelous. And I'm pretty sure that the reason that it's in the new Great Book set is because of the mastery of human nature and the inner... basically Middlemarch is a place in England, and you're there, right? Like, you become part of multiple stories. That's what happens in great novels. Shorter novels usually is about one group of people, kind of one family story, one individual. When you get these big fat novels, people can be intimidated by them and scared by them, but the truth is it's just like reading 2 or 3 shorter novels, because there's different family lines going on, and people end up being interconnected. Like in this one, you're basically learning about the multiple families that some of them become kind of interconnected, and you don't realize how they're connected, you realize that over time. It's also a book that does a really fabulous job of being clear about, like, right and wrong, good and bad, that kind of stuff. And there's natural consequences for those things. It's definitely a whole book in that sense, that its approach to life is in line with principles and with true human nature laws. Now, there's also a few really fabulous themes. Courtship is really fabulous. I'm gonna say this, and maybe there's girls out there, young women, young adults that love reading, that are great readers. This is like kind of the epitome of Victorian novel. It's not going to be your Jane Austen in that it's quite so, I don't know, it has a different feeling, like it's a little more elevated, elegant, detailed. She goes off on descriptions sometimes of people and of things, but not nearly like, War and Peace will go off on a battle forever, or Les Mis goes off on the sewer system for I don't even know how many pages. The first 100 pages of Les Mis is about the priest, and he's incredible. It's fabulous. She doesn't do that kind of stuff. It's actually quite pretty good plot flow as far as really big fat novels go. Most of the time you're engaged with characters interacting, and you're either learning about what one of the characters is struggling with or what's going on with them personally, or there's like dialogue and characters interacting. So it's really a fun read, maybe funner for some people in that sense, that there's a lot of good, it's a faster moving novel than some other books would be, like Anna Karenina. There's more tangents there, things that maybe people, this one, Middlemarch, compared to like something like War and Peace or Anna Karenina, it's not as, it doesn't have as much political bent as some of those other books do. George Eliot wasn't necessarily about that kind of stuff. It's much more about relationships and people and society and social expectations and classes, and courtship is a fabulous and really important theme. I mean, I'm really going to try to convince my girls to listen to or read this book as they enter those years, because it shows the relationships start out, and you're introduced to these people and you see how they're different, and then you see who marries who and what kind of problems they're in for. And you can see how terrible it is to marry someone before you know them very well. And societally, there were some barriers to them really knowing each other really well. Societally today, I think, probably in this time, the boundaries may have been too tight. They were trying to protect people morally. I think today the boundaries are too loose. You think you know someone and you think that you're very close to them because you're intimate too soon. You're physical too soon. And so that becomes a deception in the relationship. They're kind of deceived in this sense, like, because there's people in the room and they can't be private as much as they need to. There's definitely a balance there, but it's a really important thing to think about and talk about with other young adults, with people who have been married and people who are dating, and to think about some of the things that these young people should have thought about and talked to their future spouse about before they got married. Because a couple of them have horrible experiences in their marriages, and they built up all these expectations of what their spouse was going to do or be, and then they weren't that way at all. And they didn't have those conversations. They didn't wait it out and date them longer, spend more time with them. And honestly, some of those things probably would have been revealed over time had they given it the right amount of time. So courtship is really fabulous. The other probably most dominant theme that really makes it such a valuable read, again, probably for young people, but really for all of us, is personal finance. There's a handful of people that do really stupid things financially, and then there's like one character who's really a philanthropist. He's really, really generous and good to people, but deep down inside, it's just his duty, and he doesn't do it for the right intentions, and it ends up actually souring his character that he's generous with his money. And then there's other people that are young and stupid, and they get into all kinds of debt, and it shrinks their possible choices. They're banking on things. They're banking on that they're going to inherit things, or they're going to have money in the future. And we've done that in our marriage. We've counted on our ship's going to come in. This thing is going to really pay off for us or whatever, and it didn't. And so then here we are stuck with debt or consequences that we didn't want. And so I would say that this is a fabulous read for any age. I think you'll really enjoy the different characters. When you're in a book like this that's thicker and that has a lot more to it, maybe like, Vanity Fair, one of those kinds of books, sometimes the authors want to preach something, or they kind of go off on a tangent for a while. Lots of times that information is important later on, or sometimes it's just because they're brilliant at human nature and they want to describe details that are important. Don't let that deter you. Don't set it down. Don't stop reading it because that's there. I mean, this is definitely a book that you could set by your nightstand half an hour before you go to sleep, and maybe it's going to take you a few months. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about how long it's going to take you. Don't be intimidated by the size. Just really take some time. And I mean, your book group could do it in slices. You could do 300 pages a month. That's a normal, very average normal novel size, and you could do it over 3 months, and you could discuss the first third and the second third and the last part, and how the characters are developing, and why things are going the way they're going, and how you think it's going to turn out, and why you think the characters are making dumb or stupid choices. And then you can it's kind of fun too when you do a book discussion that way, to project and ask each other, well, what do you think's going to happen, and to kind of make a prediction and then see if you turn out to be right and why you were right or why you were wrong. And then to discuss the aspects and characteristics of human nature, where people are cowardly, why they're cowardly, how they could have more courage, and there's a good amount of, I mean, it's one of those books that's satisfying in the end because several of the things turn out the way you want them to, and there's, the bad characters, there's justice and all that for them. But there are a couple ways in which I wanted things to work out a little bit better or a little bit different, and they didn't. Then it kind of bothered me as I finished up the book, but then I thought, real life isn't like that either. This is definitely a realistic novel in that tradition. Hugo was writing realistic novels. Tolstoy definitely was realistic fiction. And so they're really attempting to be true to how people really behave and what really goes on in society. And it's very valuable. Fantasy, science fiction, all these genres of novels, these different types of novels are valuable for different reasons. These realistic novels are valuable because they really force us to look at ourselves. And if you just bring this into modern day, this kind of thing really does go on between people, and they don't want to say things, they don't want to interact, and then they have consequences. So anyway, that's George Eliot. Learn a little bit more about her as you go into the work. Learn a little bit about the history of this book. It's really interesting. She loved writing. She was anyway, she wrote several large novels. Silas Marner is also another really popular one of hers that I really also think is very worth reading, and we'll do another blog post on that one. But George Eliot, Middlemarch, read it, take time. If it takes you a little while, that's okay. Just attack it. And you know what? If you read a big fat book like this, when you're all done, you won't be intimidated by any fat book ever again. So it's totally worth doing. Anyway, enjoy it.